So I'm actually excited to do this video. This is one that I've had planned for a little bit, and I don't want to call it like a poor man's video essay, but it just that's kind of what I'm going to call it because I want to talk about all three of the All Quiet on the Western Front films. I had a chance to watch all three basically back to back because I really just wanted to sort of study and sort of figure out what makes this story click. Because if you don't know, it's also based, the movie All Quiet on the Western Front is also based off of a book. It's an anti-war book. The movies are definitely anti-war movies. And it's really cool because all three of the films, you have one that came out in the 1930s, then you have the 1979 version, and you have the 2022 version. Well, the one that first came out, World War I, was still very fresh on people's minds. And it's also, I mean, seriously, for its time, it's kind of brutal. It was really cool to go through and sort of see how this story has sort of evolved over the last almost 100 years. Now, I had a chance to watch the Blu-ray for All Quiet on the Western Front. This is the original version, and then this is the 1979 version that I checked out, which is I think it's the 178 1 aspect ratio version, so it's not the 4:3 aspect ratio version. I have seen the comparisons though, and I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of cool with it being this aspect ratio because I didn't really feel like I was missing out on a lot of the frames, the frame. It's there to fit your TV. I understand if you watch it in its original aspect ratio, that's sort of the way that it was filmed for those TVs at the time. But I didn't really have a problem with it. Just seeing what I was missing out on, it's not really that big of a deal. And then I watched the 2022 All Quiet on the Western Front, which I did watch the German version. I did not watch the dubbed version. Do not do that, please. It works better that way. I think that's actually the first time the film was actually told. I know it's from the German side of the war, but I think it's the first time German filmmakers actually made it, which is pretty interesting, I think. But I want to go through each one of these films. I might even do just sort of a little ranking at the end, just sort of let you guys know which ones I like better, which one, there's only three of them, but I mean, I might as well. So the 1930 version is in English, and it's directed by Lewis Milestone. Like I said, this one is fresh off of the war. Well, not fresh off the war. I mean, time has obviously passed, but the war was still fresh in people's minds. Of course, this is it's the original one. This is the one that I think nowadays a lot of people would have a harder time getting into, because it's black and white, it's old. Some people have an issue with that, and it shouldn't be. But one thing that these three films have in common is, especially with this one, these people, I mean, you could basically call them kids. These kids are really excited to join in the war. I mean, this is what they want to do. And it's set up I don't want to say it's set up nicely, but it's set up in a way at the beginning to where it almost makes sense that these people would want to join. I mean, you're fighting for your country. This is something that you feel obligated to do. Just starting it out, it's very casual. These people are laughing, joking, they're excited to get into it, and, things don't really turn out how they're supposed to, obviously, because it's war. One thing that I really appreciated with this film, with the character Himmelstoss, I really did sort of, I mean, it's obviously something that's very disrespectful in the military, but you don't, I can't even talk the military, you don't really, treat your superior officers in a bad way. They're ahead of you, you're below them. That's kind of just how it works in the military. And I actually understand that, I get it. That's how it's kind of supposed to be. You have to have discipline when you're starting an army or when you're in an army. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. But it's really interesting to see these young soldiers and these troops sort of almost harass, their superior Himmelstoss in a way, which I don't want to spoil. It's not, I mean, I don't think it'd be a spoiler to the story. It's not going to ruin the story, but just the way that they humiliate him and the way that they do it, I was really taken aback when I first saw that, because, I mean, that's just something that you don't do. And you don't really see that a lot in war movies. Like, I couldn't imagine seeing, Private Joker, do something to R. Lee Ermey's character, Sergeant Hartman. I mean, that would just be, I just couldn't see it. And if it did, Private Joker would probably be dead. And overall, I just don't think they understand the severity of the situation and the war that they're actually about to enter. The film does a really good job of building up what's gonna happen, opposed to the other two films, which I'll talk about a little bit later. How they kind of just jump you in. You know, you're just already in the battle. You're in the midst of everything. But this film, you know, it really does sort of take its time. Not necessarily take its time, but it really does try to, you know, set up the mood and the tone of the film before they actually kind of throw you into the action. I feel like in some ways that works better, but in other ways it sort of hinders things because, you know, if you just sort of jump into the action like that, you do sort of sacrifice sometimes character development, and you sort of sacrifice, you know, the mood that you're going for if you're trying to make this, you know, especially with your characters, make something somewhat lighthearted before things get really, you know, intense. And when you start things off really intense, well, people already know the mood. People already know, you know, how bad this actually is going to become. But whenever you do sort of open things up and things are lighthearted and, you know, like I said, people don't understand the severity of what they're about to get into, then you sort of, you know, you risk the intensity of it all. You know, you risk, you know, showing how brutal this stuff actually is. But I feel like the original All Quiet on the Western Front did a really good job of that. It did a really good job of sort of balancing everything. And I can really appreciate that. And there's a couple of, there's some interesting things that you can sort of catch on, you know, in the film with the boots. And then, you know, Paul is basically called a coward for sort of speaking his mind on the situation and speaking the truth. When somebody dies in this, you know, in the battle sequences, it's no big deal. You know, they keep pushing on. It's another day at the office for them. But it's really cool to sort of see Paul and how he takes everything, how he takes everything in. And there's also that one sequence which they do a pretty good job of keeping it the same throughout the whole entire film, where he's in this sort of big trench or this big artillery hole with, you know, somebody from the opposing side, and he takes that dude's life. And it's really interesting to see. Death has been going on all around him, but it's just this. When it gets really up close and personal, you sort of get to see the, you know, the reality of it all, and it's really interesting seeing him, you know, in that situation. It's not a good situation for him to be in, obviously, but it's interesting. And back when it comes to the boots. You know, he wants to use this soldier's boots, and then eventually when that soldier passes, he gets the boots, and it's sort of this, it's almost this nonchalant thing, but it's this big thing because it's like, oh, well, he's dead, I'll take his boots. But then, I mean, he gets the boots, and it's like, okay, well, I needed these. You kind of get it. It really does show the grittiness of the war, and how World War One is. And you don't really get to see World War One a lot in media compared to World War Two. World War One is just flat out depressing. I mean, if you look at documentaries, if you look at, I mean, the war in any other types of media, it's just straight up depressing, kind of how it is. I mean, war is depressing in general, but I mean, fuck, World War One was just trenches and barbed wire. And the ending, which I don't want to spoil anything for anybody that hasn't seen the film, but the ending of this film involves a butterfly. And the ending differs with each film, and I think I like that. I really do, because it really does add a lot of I don't want to say replay value, you know, or rewatchability, because honestly, when I don't know, it was just, I didn't feel like I was rewatching a film when I was watching these three films. I mean, yes, it was the same story for the most part, and yes, it hit a lot of the same story beats, but I don't know, the way that the other films go about it, I mean, hey, it's time to talk about those. So let's go ahead and talk about the 1979 version. So the 1979 version was directed by Dilbert Mann, and it stars, well, it has Donald Pleasence in it, but it stars Richard Thomas. And this film just throws you right into the action. Now, I believe this was a made-for-TV film. And if you're not familiar with who Richard Thomas is, he plays, I believe, I think it was Bill in It, the original It miniseries. And this film does things a little bit different, and it introduces time jumps. I think time jumps for this particular story works so much better. I feel like that works a lot better. And the production value for this film is, it's so good. I mean, I would argue this film is obviously not as brutal as the 1931, and it's definitely not as brutal as the new one that came out. But I feel like its production value, it's just so good. Like, everything just felt so real. For a made-for-TV film, it was pretty damn good. I'm not going to lie. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't one, because I know for a lot of made-for-TV movies, a lot of things are the production value can be a lot lower at times. But for this one, it wasn't. And the 1930 version is actually, I believe, the shortest one. This one is actually the longest one. This one clocks in at, I mean, it's basically close to 3 hours. Voice cracked there. Let me try that again. 3 hours. It just works. I feel like the runtime, it was paced very well. I had no problem sitting through watching it. Like I said, I seen the 1931 before I watched this one, and I had no issue sitting through this one. Just like I had no issue sitting through the 2022 version. But the opening is very erratic, and it also, like, not the 1931 doesn't do this, and the 1922 one doesn't do this, but this one is actually narrated as well, which again I feel like really does add another layer to this film, on top of the time jumps. You know, I mean, the time jumps are sparse, but it works. It works, and I feel like when you have you know, a narrator in this, which is obviously your lead, it works a lot better that way because you're getting closer to that lead, and where this is very much centered around, I mean, yes, you have a whole platoon that you're watching, and you're experiencing these battle sequences with this platoon, but it is sort of centered on one character, and having that character narrate the entire film, it just works. I really liked Kaczynski's character in this. I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Kaczynski's character in this, which is the guy that plays it is Ernest, I believe. I forget I can't pronounce his last name. I'm thinking of it. But he does a very exceptional job in this, and he is my favorite version of Kaczynski in the film. I don't know, there's just something about his demeanor, that the performance is really good. The performance in this one is really good as well. I mean, obviously, the performance throughout all of it is, I mean, good. I mean, if you're going to be in this situation you find yourself in, you know, like with these characters, then, I mean, yes, you kind of got to nail it. And I don't know, like I said, for a made-for-TV movie, it's pretty damn good. And Paul takes more of a center stage. And I also like how they sort of utilize the gas mask in this, which was, you know, featured heavily in World War I. They didn't really do it in the 1930 version, but this one they do. And I could really appreciate that because it made it feel a little bit more accurate. And also, I mean, it makes things, you know, it feels like there's more at stake because you're literally like, okay, well, this battlefield is obviously not safe, but now with tear gas running around or mustard gas, so now you have to run through all this shit, and you got to like wear a gas mask, and you're also like running through no man's land. Like I said, it's overall just horrific. And for this ending, which, like I said, I won't spoil anything, but it involves a bird and a drawing, and it's the same concept, you know, it's the same basic concept as, you know, the original butterfly ending. But this is why I would recommend watching all three of them, because I really do, I don't know, like, it's everything comes full circle in this really, I don't want to say beautiful way, but this bizarre beautiful way. I don't know, I shouldn't even say beautiful, like, I'm just kind of going to stop right there. Now, I wanted to throw this in there. It actually, the war itself, the 1930 version, I mean, yeah, you sort of get to see Paul and his interactions outside of the war, but I feel like the 1979 version did a really good job of actually showing you how Paul feels. I know this is almost like how the 1979 version is better than the original, you know, from my point of view. But I still like the original one. I'm just doing basic comparisons. The 2022 version, this is the one that Netflix distributed. It's the German version. I would highly recommend watching the German version. I really hope Criterion picks this up. And this one is directed by Edward Berger. Now, one thing that this film does a lot different, I mean, this film is, I feel like this film strays way more than the other ones. This film does its own thing almost. Like this is almost a reimagining of the other two films, because while the other two films were, you know, they were very close in terms of the narrative, this one really decides to do its own thing almost. Again, this film sort of throws you in, and you know, I feel like the character development is almost the same as the 1979 version, but Paul is he's very focused in this one. And I do feel like I like this. I like his interactions with everybody in this film. This film is also a lot more brutal than the other ones. This film is absolutely brutal, and the cinematography is just gorgeous. I mean, this is one of the best looking films I've seen all year. maybe in the last couple of years. I mean, this looks like something that Roger Deakins would have shot. It really did remind me a lot of 1917, which I don't know, I really do think 1917 would be the better film, but this film's not too far off. I mean, they're not really comparable. I mean, they're both set in World War One. I don't even know why I'm making this comparison. I would highly recommend not watching the dubbed version. And I'm not going to talk about the ending for this one because the ending of this one is actually sort of crazy. Like I said, it really does stray away from the other two. But I feel like that was for the best. I feel like that was for the best because if you're going to tell the same story 3 times, and of course there's also a novelization of it that came out before any of this, and then of course there's also the experience that came from real life, you got to do something. And I feel like this film did a really good job. I think one complaint that I would have to make for the new version of All Quiet on the Western Front, its effects can sort of be all over the place, which I'm not going to hound that, but I mean, when you're working with the production value of what, you know, the film had, and I'm assuming it had somewhat of a big budget, I feel like, especially with it being Netflix, which I'm pretty sure the film was, I mean, I'm pretty sure the film was just made and Netflix acquired it, because I believe this is the most expensive German language film that was made at the time, or ever made. I don't know. I feel like they could have done a little bit better. I feel bad for saying that because I know how hard it is to make a film, especially with practical effects and CGI. But I don't know. I feel like all I'm going to say is it looks good. I was thrown off a little bit. But I want to talk about the soundtrack a little bit more because the soundtrack was just blunt. I mean, it really did remind me almost of Battlefield 1 where it's like, bah, 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 bah. You know, like it was, I wasn't expecting it. You know, I really wasn't expecting it. And there's also a really cool moment in the film where they utilize tank warfare, you know, which I was talking about the 1930s version, which really showed, you know, the trench warfare and it showed no man's land. But then the 1979 version utilized the gas mask, you know, and you got to sort of see how the gas masks work. Well, this one utilizes the tanks and the flamethrowers, and it's brutal, like really, really brutal. So with that said, all 3 versions of All Quiet on the Western Front, they do something a little bit different. And I feel like each film is, like I said, very important. I would highly recommend watching each one. I also wanted to throw out there, you can get a Blu-ray version of this. There's a Blu-ray version of this, and I think there's another edition. So if not having the 4:3 aspect ratio version bothers you, I mean, you could get that one, but it really isn't that bad. And I'm literally somebody who's like obsessed with aspect ratios. And I know that might not make sense, me saying that, but you would kind of just have to know me. It's really weird. But they all 3 do their own thing. But they respect, you know, the source material. And I feel like all 3 films are really good. And all 3 films are worth the watch. If I had to do a ranking for these, I would probably say the original 1930 version is my least favorite. It's still good. It's just my least favorite. Then the 2022 version. And then my favorite one is the 1979 version. I loved the 1979 version. And I could see myself revisiting that more so than the other ones. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a thumbs up and maybe subscribe. I have some more videos coming soon. Hopefully I have a video discussion or whatever for Bones and All. I haven't had a chance to see that one yet because I've been waiting on somebody to come back from out of state. You know who you are if you're watching this. Also, Avatar: Way of the Water. I would like to go see The Fabelmans. I don't know why I haven't seen it. I plan on seeing it. Hopefully I see it soon. And then also Knives Out, you know, maybe Pinocchio. I mean, I don't know. I'm a little bit late on that party, I think. But yeah, and also what I watched in November, which is going to be stacked because I did watch a lot of stuff. And I might show you guys my new movie setup too, because we took advantage of Black Friday. Excuse me. Yeah, I'll get into that a little bit later. But anyway, guys, I apologize for it taking me this long to make another video. I've just been really busy, you know, just with the holidays and Thanksgiving. I hope you guys had a fantastic Thanksgiving. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you guys are staying safe out there. Let me know what your favorite All Quiet on the Western Front version is down in the comments below. And I'll see you guys next time.